Good morning and welcome to the Art Business Podcast. My name is David Bellingham. I'm Programme Director of the MA Art Business at Sotheby's Institute of Art in London. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Michalina Maria Franasik, a recent graduate of the programme and an emerging art professional whose work spans antiques, decorative arts, art fairs, content creation and international cultural engagement. Michalina currently works with the Treasure House Art Fair in London, and that is why we're making this recording now, because she will talk more about when that's going to be and where it will be in London later, and we'll put a link in the podcast information. She works there as communications manager, but she's also creative director of a contemporary art space in Poland, which we'll talk about. We'll give you the name later on. So Michalina has experience of the art world in both Poland and the UK, and that would be one of the themes we'll be exploring later. So she's also involved in developing digital content, had a very good, I remember her Instagram was always really good, and communications projects within the art world. Michalina's career offers an excellent example of how today's graduates are creating opportunities across multiple areas of the cultural sector. So Michalina, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you for having me. And it's a pleasure to see you in the morning.
Absolutely.
In the busiest time of the year.
Absolutely. And Michalina and I are doing this, recording this before we both get to work, as it were, in our day jobs. So let's start at the beginning. Michalina, what first attracted you to the art world as a career rather than simply as an interest?
Mm-hmm. So I think it was kind of organic. My first interest in art started when I was around 15. I took part in like a regional art history competition in Poland. It was a random decision. My friends did that. So I was like, oh, this is cool. If I pass this, I wouldn't have to pass maths. So I was like, of course, it's a clear decision. I'm gonna do it. And then after I eventually kind of won and went pretty far into the competition, I realized this is quite an interesting topic, and it always stayed with me. I never studied art history on my undergrad, or my master's was kind of a connection between art and business, but wasn't very much like art history in that sense. And I always kind of tried to learn by myself, because I believe in self improvement and that you can always learn whatever you want, even by just reading or researching online. So I think my connection with art history and art and passion for traveling and visiting places later on took me to the point that I realized what I like to do. And my family always encouraged me to do things that I'm good at and I like to do, and then eventually turn them into my job or career. And that's how I did it. So my master was a kind of first step to making this into my career. I studied business management before, so this was kind of like a bit of a more niche course that took me and kind of took me back to my interest in a way. So I connected my business experience with art again, and then from there it started.
Or maybe I know that from interviews of prospective students, I know that some of them watch this podcast and they might be quite interested, because quite a lot of our students, as you know, don't come from a traditional academic art historical or art practice background. And they might have done a degree in business or management. So it might be quite interesting for you to say how, was it a waste of time doing the MA in art business, or how did it differ from what added value did it give you from your experience in business courses?
So my business courses, I studied in Poland, and then I did 2 Erasmus exchanges, which are kind of European exchanges for students. You can take any country in Europe that you would like to visit if you have good enough grades, and just go and study there. So I already had some international study experience on my undergraduate, but it was quite very analytical, a lot of maths, a lot of things that I'm not really good at. But it was interesting to just find out more about it. But what was interesting for me during my undergrad was all the courses that were with people, about making like projects, presentations, very interconnected with our other students. And this is, I think, what I found in my master's the most kind of valuable, that it was really kind of the teaching was about teaching us how to speak with each other. Very often, a lot of this discussion and kind of open conversation. I would say the master's was less academic than my previous education, but this is what I kind of wanted and this is what I expected, because the master's is very practical, I think. And this is what makes it valuable, especially in a city like London. This is what, in my opinion, you really need to get into arts. You have to be practical. You have to visit places, see the galleries, see the auction houses, meet the experts. And we had a lot of opportunities for that because, even for our lectures, every lectures, there was somebody else coming who either developed a business in the art world, was working in auction house, in a gallery, whatever they were doing, they were always doing something for themselves. And for me, as a person, as you will hear later, that always wanted to work for themselves at the end. This is my kind of end goal. That this was quite inspiring and
That's
different
really,
from my
yeah.
undergrad in the sense that was more practical. And I met more people on the court, and I'm still friends with them. And we keep a kind of like community together. So it really worked.
Yeah, no, I mean, more and more of my students, I notice are using LinkedIn in a more serious professional manner, which is great because it makes it much easier for me to check up what everyone's doing at the moment. I'm kind of working my way back through my LinkedIn year by year in terms of the graduation dates and find, it's very, very interesting to see what people say 5 years ago are now doing in the art world. In fact, a recent podcast was with a student from 2006 to 7, and
Oh, that's
she's
very
now
cool.
working in art insurance. So check that one out. What I was going to ask is when you started in London on the MA Art business, did you arrive with a clear career destination in mind at the start of the program, or did the program help shape your ambitions, perhaps?
So I came to London with, I would say, zero experience in the art world. As I said, I studied business management. Before I was working in a corporation, I was doing finance. So I never visited an art fair when before I came to London. I never really went to the private view. I never saw an auction happening. So I was experiencing this all for the first time. It was very exciting. I remember my really good friend invited us for a preview of Philips auction. Was like a week after I arrived. I was like, oh my god, this is like so cool. Like I never really imagined that you can really just come, and just see all this artwork being for sale. For me, that was such a new concept. Which 3 years later, I'm looking at it. I'm like, wow, this was crazy that I like literally had no idea. But you know, I came here with kind of no connections, no friends, and not a clear idea of what I really want to do. I I rather was very focused on learning and discovering rather than just being like locked into one idea. Obviously, because I was not very experienced in the art world, I didn't know about many options that are there. And I think I would like to highlight that auction houses and galleries are not the only spaces that people just should like focus on, which I think is the main focus because Sotheby's, Christie's, Bottoms, everyone wants to be there, which is really valuable. And these are great companies, but they are big companies. And I think after talking to many alumni, but also students, current students, I often hear that, you know, and I believe in it. When you are quite young and you're just beginning, I feel like sometimes you could value more just having experience working in smaller company that will give you more responsibility. Maybe it's less of a name, but I think you can work out more contacts and learn more in smaller company where you have more responsibility. And that's what I kind of believe in. And I always try to encourage people to do that rather than just, building their CV in the way that maybe is not so satisfying for their soul. So answering your question, yeah, I didn't have too much of a goal. I was thinking, like many of people, that I want to work maybe in Sotheby's because that was like the only option I knew really. And yeah, the course kind of showed me that there are more options. You can do insurance, you can do logistics, you can work at the art fair, which I'm working now. I'm very happy, and I would recommend anyone who's starting working at the art fair, because then you have access to galleries, to art advisory, to membership club, to auction houses sometimes, even though we're not closely working with them. So you get a sense of everything in a way.
Yeah, no, it's a much bigger world, I think, than a lot of people studying at school, like studying art history. I think that I've been to careers fairs and to try and help young people, and they usually come along thinking that it's only auction houses that are the more commercial part. That's the only jobs. And as you say, we've got art insurance, as I've just mentioned. We've got the art fairs. We've got logistical companies. Many of my students now work for those moving art around the world. We by the way, we just come back from the Venice Biennale when you were talking about the study trips that we do, and students are all saying, "Oh, this was the best yet." And we have lectures, as you'll remember, on the running of that Biennale, which has to be surely the biggest art event in the world, logistically speaking, I would say. But at the same time, of course, all the time as you said, when you knew nothing about the art world, I think Venice is a great place for the Biennale because there's so many galleries there, there's curators there, sometimes you meet the artists, and you get a real sense of the cultural art world as opposed to the business art world. And the two are interconnected, of course. But what I was going to say, I think you kind of almost hinted at this. For many students, the art world, I think, can feel quite opaque from the outside, and difficult to enter. I think that's true for a lot of people, not just students. What surprised you most once you began engaging professionally with the art sector?
So I I must say that there is a big competition, but
Hmm.
I believe that it's in every sector. It's not only arts, and you have to really work kind of hard and know a lot of people to get a job and then be professionally successful. But I believe that it's in every industry, and the art industry is not much harder or much easier than any other. It's just different in sense of how it works, and it's very interpersonal, and it's very based on connections, which I think coming from my experience, I already had a sense, and I knew it, even though nobody really taught me. But even art was always about the viewer and the artist, and meeting and talking. And then when you have to sell art, or you have to market it, brand it, you always have to talk, and there's no way that you just won't do it. So I think, I'm not sure, like, if I would say the artwork is opaque. I think if you really want to get into it, you can always find a way, even without connections. As I said, I had not many connections, if not zero, but through, and I think you will ask me later about it, but through like social media and going to a lot of events. I had this goal when I was quite crazy goal when I think about it now, but since I came to London, I was having this goal that, I'm opening my art account on Instagram, and I will post something every day. And I posted something every day with, big text that I was writing, what I thought about it, without knowing too much about it, right? Because I never studied art history. It was just my subjective opinion about things. Like what I saw, I was at this exhibition, I was at this exhibition. Now I scroll down, I'm like, wow, I really was crazy. And I remember every day, because this was before I met anyone at the course. So I was just walking around London, seeing stuff. Went to Tate. I went there. I was all alone and just writing this little text about what I saw and being very consistent with it. And I think with this consistency is where what got me into some places, and remaining determined about what I want. But also, as I said, my goal was to go to places. So I think every week at some point, I just told myself I will go to the art opening, to whatever is happening by myself, and I will just talk to at least one person. However awkward it felt, and you know, kind of, I was not really that good with talking to people. If people might be quite surprised if I tell them that I was an introverted person. I was maybe not an introverted person, but coming to another country, starting your life from scratch, and just talking to some random people about art that you don't really know about, but they know more than you, it's quite intimidating. And maybe this is what I would use. Like, artwork can be intimidating, and you might feel like you cannot speak to these people and they're better than you and they know more and blah 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 and are more cool. But I'm coming from this perspective that each one of us has a different story and coming from different place that is very interesting as well to other people. So why wouldn't I, start a conversation? So I think it's possible to get what what whatever what whoever wants, but it takes a lot of talking.
Well, I think it's honestly, I hope people are listening to this because it's just excellent advice. As you know, I tend to say to students at the start of the year, do the weekends. You should be going around either on your own or with a very small group of friends from the program or the other MAs, and mapping out a route of galleries, particularly the emerging galleries, perhaps, or
Mhm.
maybe one morning go around some of the antiques, the more antique galleries and old master galleries, and just have confidence and go in and look. And sometimes people will be a little bit standoffish, but a lot of the time people are very, very interested. But I think particularly in those latter places of antiques and
Mhm.
decorative arts, they're really interested to see younger people, if I may say.
Mhm. Yeah.
So interesting that, and that brings me on to my next question about. I think younger audiences, particularly in the new millennium, when we've seen this huge explosion of interest in contemporary art, which really wasn't there, when I was your kind of age group
Mhm.
in the last millennium, in the last century. So I would say many younger audiences are now much more familiar with contemporary art than antiques. Do you think antiques and decorative arts, if you like, remain relevant today?
Yeah, I think it's coming back. It's always like on and off with everything. I think, and I know many of my friends and many people that are really about kind of cross collecting, and they love contemporary art, but also, since we are living in the era of like digitalization and a lot of things that are just online, people really start to appreciate just craftsmanship, things that they can touch, things that have been made long time ago before they even existed, and have a history and a sense of like beauty and quality. And I see, for as I'm working at the fair and that is focused on art, antiques, and design, we do have majority of our audience is still quite an older generation, because that's where the fair is coming from the tradition of masterpiece and Grosvenor Fair that we're all in the same time in London since 90 years. So there's still a big batch of people that are quite older, but I think many younger people are really getting interested into buying like beautiful furniture, first maybe some decorative pieces, vases, design objects that I think are now quite on the wave, if I can say like that. I also heard that, for example, South Korea, it's a big market for antiques for younger collectors. So I think it depends on the country, and obviously it depends on how much people can afford, because I'm not gonna lie, these things are expensive. So many of younger generations cannot afford them simply, or do not have houses to host this kind of big furniture. Even our exhibitors at the fair are laughing sometimes that oh, I wish they would be like a jewelry dealer, because they just pack a box, fly from New York, and they are. And then my cabinet is like 3 meters long, and I have to have a bigger stand because it's so big, to just exhibit it. And it's not even the same price, because sometimes the bracelet that is can be packed in one box is more expensive than the whole cabinet. That is made of wood and oak, and it's big and quite heavy. But it's a beautiful piece that has been there forever and it's timeless. So I think people will come back to this idea of timelessness and craftsmanship, and I think it's slowly coming back, and the wave of a generation is changing. But I think it will never be like in the past, because in the past the collector was very focused on, like, let's say, he loved English furniture from 18th century, and that was the whole, like, atmosphere of the collection on of the house. So it was only that. Whereas now I think people tend to pick couple of pieces from different periods, and then mix them together, which I would personally also do, and I want to do it in the future. So I think I can be, the best example for that
That's
myself.
very interesting. I remember in the first time I took the students to TFAF, was way back in 2004, I think it was. New millennium, contemporary art becoming bigger and bigger, the opening of Tate Modern. And I remember, yes, so at TFAF, for the first time, I saw Axel Vervoort's gallery. He's based, as you may know, in Antwerp. And his was the first. There may have been earlier ones, but I believe that his was one of the first where I was saying to the students, "Look at this. This is very interesting." We go to one gallery and it had old masters. We go to another gallery, it had furniture or Chinese ceramics, and suddenly there was this gallery that looked very like a contemporary space, like in someone's house, and it had like a fossil, a natural object on the mantelpiece, and then it had, say, like a Damien Hirst spot painting on the wall, and then a piece of Dutch modernist furniture and an Egyptian antiquity. And this was my first experience of cross display. And Verboort was one of the first, I think, to try and encourage people to choose objects aesthetically again, because we've moved into this art history of everything has to be contextualized and part of its period. And I think that those cross collecting and others then followed, including some of the old master galleries like Robelant and Voyner. Suddenly they were showing like post-war Italian art, maybe for slightly for other reasons, but they were mixing it with their Italian old master paintings. And suddenly there was this big fashion, I would say, in that cross collecting of art from not just different periods, but different, skeleton, dinosaurs and things. All of this was being added in, almost as though we were going back to cabinets of curiosities in the 18th century. And I believe that Treasure House Art Fair, which you are working at, I do remember when Masterpiece was founded out, that when Grosvenor Antiques Fair closed, and then Treasure Masterpieces formed out of that. I think something like 2009 to 10, if I remember rightly. And their whole, I did an interview for the art newspaper actually with the two of the founders, and the whole approach was, if I may say so, let's set this up. Let's show beautiful objects and art from different periods and different societies, and try and attract maybe a younger audience as well. And I remember in their advertising, they had photographs of Mick Jagger talking to Ronald Phillips, the antiques,
Yeah.
and it was really amazing what they were doing, because these people were coming from old master and decorative arts traditions that they'd inherited, and they had the vision, if you like, to see where this was going. So I would encourage people to go to Treasure House as then the new edition, if you like, iteration of Masterpiece. And I would encourage people to go and experience that.
Yeah, I'll be more than welcome to welcome anyone in 1 week. It's a week to
Absolutely.
go, so
So basically, turning to Treasure House Fair, you've been working there, and it's one of London's major events, say, for arts, antiques, and design, one might say, decorative art design. Maybe you could say something about what happens behind the scenes that the visitors never see, because it always strikes me, we went to TFAF in Mars Street, which Treasure House and Masterpiece are probably most like. They're not contemporary art fairs in that definition of
yeah,
the word.
I like to say that we are a younger brother of Czechoslovakia.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But what you see, as you'll remember, Michalina, from visits there, you see this kind of wonderful, paradisical, beautiful luxury art world, which has been cleverly constructed. And uh, maybe you could say something about what's going on behind the scenes in terms of what you're doing at the moment, in terms of preparing for it, and what you hope on that opening day people will come and see.
So yeah, as many of you that will maybe walk by the Thames now in Royal Hospital Chelsea, you will not see the fair. It's not there yet. So it's 1 week to the fair and we are still building. I think the idea of art fair is that it's glamorous, it's like so luxe and all these carpets and velvets and beautiful art. But actually working at the art fair, it's working at the construction site because it's a big logistical operation. Our fair does not have do not have a temporary like kind of place that is there the whole year. For example, a step up, since it is placed in like a big kind of conference kind of center that is there the whole year, and there are other events in the same place taking place the whole year round. Our fair takes place on the grounds of Royal Hospital Chelsea, which is a historic building in the heart of Chelsea, with a lot of Chelsea pensioners living there like the whole year round. So we have to build the fair from scratch and plan it the whole year round. Many people are quite surprised when I tell them that we already start planning in August. And then it takes the whole year to build the fair, all the planning permissions, logistical stuff, then signing up the exhibitors, marketing, branding, selling tickets, sending tickets, and then organizing all the events at the fair. We invite a lot of membership clubs. We do corporate events. We do guided tours. We also have kind of like a VIP program that we change every year, and an ambassadorial program that I am co-managing this year. So, there are a lot of things that are happening. As for now, I can say that this week is kind of the crunch week. It's like the last week when you can actually do something, because next week you will be moving the office to the fair. Because also this is quite interesting. Many people are thinking that we are based there the whole year in Royal Hospital Chelsea or somewhere in Chelsea, but our office is actually in Mayfair. It's on Newburn Street, and we are there the whole year round. And then this Saturday we'll be packing all the stuff from our office into the boxes and moving it with a van to Royal Hospital, all the computers, and we'll be build our office at the fair. I think many people also don't really see the office and forget that we are there working long shifts for the duration of the event, in a quite messy and crazy place to be working in. But yeah, there are many things that make the fair happen. And our team is also quite small for quite such a big fair. The whole year round we are around 5 people, and then we also employ a lot of people before the fair around April, and also we are having Sotheby's Institute students as our hosts. So we have more and more stuff coming, since the fair is to be built and we have to manage all the positions that have to be filled. So there's a lot of hiring as well in April, May happening. So yeah, it's a bit of like a festival, I would say. It's just it's not about music. It's not about you know selling something else, but it's a big festival of art. Our boss likes to call it this way because at the end of the day, we don't want to be perceived as very serious, because we want to be a fun event that everyone can enjoy, even without knowledge of art, even without the money to buy. Obviously, buying and selling is a big goal, because we want our exhibitors to be fulfilled and happy and do business, because that's also the idea behind the art fair. It's not only about the visitor, it's mostly about the exhibitor and for them to be able to connect with right collectors and exchange. But it's about both, I think. And nowadays, since I'm a communications manager and I do a lot of marketing and social media outreach and working with people and trying to bring new audiences to the fair, I think the visitors also is very important, which sometimes maybe might be overlooked. So yeah,
Yeah,
there's no
I,
answer.
I
There's no short answer what I'm doing now. I think
It's
I'm
no,
doing.
honestly, that has, I think, told everyone. It's probably opened a lot of people's eyes to, the logistics of this and the all-round preparation. As you say, what's amazing about it, a bit like Frieze in London, where they put marquees, temporary marquees up in Regent's
Mhm,
Park. I know their offices, they used to be down in Strand. I don't know if they're still there for Frieze, and they're working there all year, and then they move to Regent's Park,
mhm,
similar. And But I did a paper which is hopefully about to be published with another collection of essays about art fairs that we hosted a conference a few years ago at Sotheby's Institute with TIAMSA, which is this art market sort of academic conference organization. I did a piece on this shows how how long ago it was, on masterpiece as a lifestyle experience, and that's what you've just been talking about. That your role as a communications marketing manager is to realize there's a lot of people are going to come to this fair with no intention of buying, but they're going there to hang out and maybe even take selfies, and it does become it is an amazing place to go and see art, like a museum, and so a lot of people are treating it as a lifestyle experience as opposed to serious sort of place to go and buy art, as it were. Well, what I was going to ask you next is what role do art fairs play today? Some people might be asking, when so much activity also happens online. And I guess connected to that is, the criticism of art fairs, the growing criticism that they're not good for sustainability because you're bringing stuff in that is kind of burning carbon. Maybe you could respond to where art fairs, where do art fairs sit in this online digital world and a world where sustainability is increasingly important, Michalina?
hmm So we are aware, we're not the the most sustainable adventure in the world, but I think many of the art related things aren't as well and have never been. Venice Biennale is a huge operation. However, they want to cut the carbon. They will never really, neutralize it because
Hmm.
their location is even more complicated and historic and hard to get to than our location. But answering the question, I think in a world of online and selling and buying, art fairs are really the place where still you can talk. And it's really simple. It's not complicated. It's just a place when you can go to the exhibitor that has so much knowledge. That's where I think my interest in antique started. Because 2 years ago, when I was still studying, I did this short internship, and I was a host at Treasure House. So I started as any student this year that is doing our internship role back then. And I just, more my role was to walk around and just greet people and be nice and, have a nice time for myself and give some leaflets, very easy task. But I always encourage people to chat, to talk to the exhibitors if they are not busy, if, they are standing and being slightly bored because 5 minutes nobody came to their stand or something like that. You can have a chat with them and be like, oh my God, like I really love this piece. Can you tell me a bit more about it? And they know everything about the pieces because that's been their job for mostly like 50 years plus. And they are just such a source of knowledge and inspiration. And they had crazy stories from their lives, shipping art all over the world and meeting, Mick Jagger, as you said, like Simon Phillips or, many of other celebrities. It's just fun to talk. And I think many people are coming back to wanting to go somewhere and meet real people, not only buy art from like a picture, but obviously for some people it's impossible to come because they're from far away. But still, there are people that are coming from very far away, so it's possible, and that's the role of the art for to like connect, make real like human connections again, and see the art in a very beautiful setting for certain period of time. And I also like to think that some galleries are coming, from Japan, from like Austria, from New York, and it's really crazy to think that we wouldn't be able to see these things if they wouldn't come. So they make such an effort for the exhibitors and for the visitors in London that is just a crime not to come. And I would do it mostly for them because and for us, I would say, and do it for the exhibitors and do it for the team because it takes a lot of work to organize this kind of event, and we are always laughing that how people just want to sit home when such a festival is happening. It's just fun. You can drink some glass of wine, you can have some afternoon tea, see beautiful things, meet interesting people. Everyone is there to enjoy. So why not to come?
Yeah, no, I mean, my experience from the word go with Masterpiece, I remember, sitting out on the terrace overlooking the Christopher Wren's beautiful buildings for the Royal Hospital. It's just a very beautiful place, and I just wanted to remind people it's actually also quite interesting near the footprint, at least, of Chelsea Flower Show, which is
Hmm.
part of the traditional British season, where
Hmm. Yeah.
traditionally aristocrats would leave their country homes for the summer season and they come down and they do Chelsea, they do Royal Ascot, which I believe is
Hmm.
happening next week,
Yeah.
and they do the Grosvenor Art Fair to buy.
Exactly.
Uh, at that time, mainly antiques and sort of silver was the thing, and that's how Masterpiece and Treasure House now has kind of transformed that into
Hmm.
sort of new collecting habits. What I was going to ask you is, have you noticed any trends amongst exhibitors and visitors? Has anything changed in your experience at Treasure House?
Hmm. So I think we, as a team, we visit a lot of fairs during the year. That's also something that I maybe might mention. The team is kind of going all around the Europe and just Europe and just seeing other fairs because we want to kind of see how people do it differently. We always strive to improve our event and make it better for both exhibitors and the visitors. And I personally noticed that I think, and that's my opinion, that smaller fairs that are more diverse will will be the kind of future of the art world. And I think kind of bigger fairs with like so many exhibitors and so much to see is it's gonna be overwhelming for the visitor. I've been recently on LAFT. It's like Lisbon Antique Fair, and it's a small fair. It takes place in this very interesting historic kind of warehouse, very near to the river in Lisbon, and it's just a long vertical, horizontal building, kind of like stable yards. And you just go, and there's one line, one aisle that is quite long. It's maybe 40 exhibitors, and it was just good amount for me for one day to just
Hmm.
enjoy, talk with everyone that I wanted. If I were to buy something, I can come back. I already know what's happening. I can really remember all the objects that are there. I don't feel overwhelming amount of stuff I saw. I'm like, oh my God, like I don't even know what I saw because I don't remember. So in a way, I think the trend I've been seeing is that this kind of smaller, more boutique, more focused fairs will do much better. Huge fairs that are, kind of scattered around like many centuries or, even frieze, contemporary frieze is for me it's quite huge. There are many galleries, and every year I go, I'm like overwhelmed with the amount of things I see there. And sometimes I feel like the quality is not maybe always there when there are so many things. So I think with our fair, we never wanted to be kind of as big as Masterpiece was. Masterpiece was twice as big as we are, if not three times big as we are. And I think our direction is more to be smaller fair with better entertainment, better visitor experience, more groups visiting, and tailored kind of experiences for individuals because we really want to have this educational aspect and let people, enjoy things that they can see there, talk to exhibitors in a very kind of capsule way. So you don't go and you see just part of it because the rest you just miss. But you can go there for one day, you see everything, you come back, you see something more because you always miss some things because there's, in a times of digitalization and we have so much in front of our eyes, like so much content, so many pictures and everything. That's I think our attention span is quite short. And this is what I think will weirdly affect the art world as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously coming back from Venice, everybody, my colleagues and all the students were saying, you really need a few months here to do the Giardini, the Arsenali, which are the core events, but also all the collateral events, which
Yeah.
are in all these palaces and buildings throughout the city. It's just impossible. And you do feel overwhelmed. I remember using the phrase to someone, I'm arted out, on one of the days. So, yeah, I think that might be a tendency towards small is beautiful. I agree. So, alongside your work in the market itself, the art market, Treasure House and so on. You're also active in content creation and digital storytelling. You said something about your first creation of like an art Instagram, which I used to follow and enjoy very much, by the way. And I've told other students that that's what you should do. You should maybe post something every day with your visit to a gallery and put some information in there, put some text in there. It doesn't have to be boring and dull and drawn from art history. It can just be your subjective responses because that's kind of what social media is about. So you're active in that. Why do you think communication has become such an important skill for art professionals today?
I think art is very visual, and you often have to, kind of show it in order to then, make a sale or explain to somebody who is the artist or how did, the exhibition look. So quite naturally, I always think of, taking pictures of things. On my phone, I have thousands of pictures of just things I saw. And I have quite a kind of like a photographic memory in a way. So, I can come back in my brain to a visit to London, to Lisbon Art Fair, and I know more or less where I saw things. But then, when I'm talking to you 2 months later, I obviously will not remember exactly what I saw. But then I like to come back to my pictures. I keep it quite consistent with taking picture of an object and then of the label, because as I said, it's not only about me liking the objects and being, I'm gonna post this object because it's pretty. No, I also want to learn about it because that's always been my kind of key goal. I'm taking pictures to then come back to them, read the label, read about the artist. I always take pictures of all the exhibition texts because sometimes when I'm in a gallery space, I tend to just like to enjoy the art. So I like to just look at what I see without knowing anything about artists. I just say, do I like it? Do I not like it? Do I like how they put it together? How they hang this? This is what I like to see. And I don't really like to read about what I see because I don't think it's something that will help me. It's rather something that will put me into maybe some other thinking path that maybe is not what I subjectively feel. So I think communication in a way kind of I went kind of far away from that. But social media is a very easy way to communicate your opinions with other people without knowing them. And it, as I said, always for free. Anyone can join and anyone could be consistent with it. And as I said, I don't I'm not a kind of advocate of using social media for scrolling every day 5 hours. I'm not an advocate of kind of making a digital archive for things you saw. You don't have to post pictures of yourself and of your private life in a way, but having this very professional art or whatever, maybe luxury objects account, whatever it might be, or like art archive, something like that, of just keeping the pictures with the descriptions, with the tags of the artist there. And if you have followers, that's great. If you don't have any followers, that's also great because it's more for you for coming back and seeing, oh, I saw this exhibition last year. This is cool. Now I saw something that is reminding me of this, and maybe the artists have some connection. I really always used it for learning purposes, and sometimes it helped me not to be so lazy because after the exhibition, I not only went there, I saw it, I was like, this is cool, I like this. I never really knew about this artist, but then I had this half an hour sitting on my phone scrolling through the pictures I made, be like, oh, this is my favorite piece, like why is it that? And then seeing what's the technique when it was made, then maybe seeing the exhibition text and seeing how far my brain went from it, if I had the same conclusions, if I had different conclusions, and then writing like 3 sentences about it, tagging the artist and posting it, you know, and just leaving it there. I always was an advocate of like intelligent posting in a way, and thanking people for inviting you, being polite. It's very important in digital space as well, and I believe in any space, personally as well.
Yeah.
But also online, it's very nice. So, for example, after I had this account, with like 200 followers, so for me it was already like, wow, 200 people following. Some people would say this is nothing. Like, why would you even waste time for it? But I always believed this is gonna take me into some places, and I'm just gonna keep doing it. And I got invited to some previews, and people were like, "Oh,
Yes.
this is interesting." I'm like, "Wow, cool." And always after I went somewhere, I did a bit of a review. I said, "Thank you so much for inviting me. This was such a pleasure." I think these are the really small things that people forget about, but they are really like powerful.
No, I
Um,
think that that's
and I'm not
I
I'm not saying to lie about that you lost something. I just said that I always was very genuine about even exhibitions that personally I didn't love the art, but I
mm,
still was very like polite and thankful for having this opportunity to come and see something that maybe was outside of my comfort zone and I wouldn't pick myself. But
mm.
I always am open for anything basically.
Yeah, and how often one struggles with art particularly contemporary art, I find, and because I'm an antiquities person, as you know, an old masters person, but a number of times I've then come back to it and thought about it, and it suddenly clicked, and I suddenly think this
Hmm.
is actually really interesting. It's part also of storytelling, of course. I often say to my students, if you don't understand something, ask the ask the person in the stand or in the gallery space or in the auction house. The moment they start storytelling, you'll probably realize what is interesting about this object, if you like.
Hmm.
Moving from that to so you have experience across both Polish and British cultural contexts. We haven't said anything about your your art space in Poland, and I believe from what you were saying before we started that you're also thinking of setting up a space in London outside of your work for Treasure House. So
Hmm.
maybe you could say something about your Polish
Hmm.
location and the forthcoming British one if you want. But also, what
Hmm.
differences have you noticed between, say, the Polish art world and the one in London?
Hmm. Some I will begin with what I'm doing in Poland. I think many people do not know I have some secret projects there because obviously I have a full-time job and I'm fully committed to the fair. But also since more or less 6 years, my dad and I and my mom and my brother, we became increasingly interested in art without having any experience of art before. So neither of my mom or dad or my brother have an experience in art. I think I am the most, in a way, educated now in this sphere. My family has quite more like financial, medical background. But 6 years ago, my dad met a very interesting artistic collective from Łódź, which is city where I live and where we are based in central Poland. They are called Łódź Kalista. This is the name of the collective, and it was five men, five artists, architects, biologists, and chemists. They had all different professions that were making an art collective. They were focusing on, and still are, on photography and mixed media, and they were creating from like 1980s. And my dad just met them, thought, oh my God, they are super interesting. They were embedded in a history of the city. They were creating new movements in Poland in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. And he just thought they are super interesting and just decided that we would like to work with them and represent them without having prior experience. So we start slowly by kind of managing the group. I wouldn't call it a gallery back then. Now we are representing other artists and wanting to do more representation, kind of developing in an organic way. So if we like something and we believe in an artist, whether they are contemporary artists or a little bit from older generation, we really kind of want to focus on that. And that's when it started. So during my Sotheby's Institute studies, we already took part in a first art fair in Warsaw Art Fair. Since then, we were taking part every year. I went to Korea representing Polish artists on the regional art fair, and we started taking up more projects. And now I'm proud to say that we'll be opening a big exhibition that will be national and will be traveling in Poland for a year and a half. And it will be a photographic exhibition about a very important rock star in Poland and her photographs. She sadly passed away some time ago, but she is kind of an icon, kind of a Madonna of Poland. And she brings together older and younger generations with her music. And we are working with a photographer estate that was shooting with her in the early stages of her career, and another photographer that was then doing her photography in later career. So we were kind of comparing them both. And we've also worked with, which is quite a niche project, but this shows that we don't want to be like a white cube, only contemporary art, gallery. That's why I'm more call it as a because creative space, kind of more like kind of art connoisseurship place. We work with film, and we were working with The Good House, a film by Wojtek Smarzowski that got awarded with many awards in Poland this year. It was a film about domestic abuse and kind of very serious topics that are happening, around the world. We published books. We've published an album about Łódź Kaliska and about Andrzej Wajda, a very important film director that is, very connected with Łódź, since a main film school is in Łódź, and many of the movies that are well known that were produced and conceptualized there. And we also do rare books editions. So we work with a bookbinder, very talented one from Łódź, again, because we're all about Łódź and we're, kind of proud of our regional talents and what we can promote there. And we produced this very interesting series of limited edition books that are binded in leather and, with gold inscriptions, with beautiful papers and materials that are produced only in like 10 10 editions. So that was a fun project that we've done. And that was when I connected in a way my experience at the art fair, when we also, our exhibitors are Shapiro Rare Books or Peter Harrington. So like the masters of bookbinding and old editions. And then at home, I also could visit a bookbinder atelier and touch all the leathers and see how she's doing it. So it's all connected in a way, my all experiences. And it's quite fun to see that. So it's a lot going on, and we are quite passionate about many things, but we think that this kind of niche interest that connect into like one creative space is what makes us an interesting entity. And my international experience of my family that is mostly in Poland is what makes us quite like cutting edge in a way, because we in the future want to do exhibition in London of Polish art. We want to bring UK based artists into Poland, and we want to make this kind of transition quite fun and see what happens. So I think there's a lot that we can still do.
It's admirable what you're doing, that you're working with if you like, a less well-known art country and space, but which we know is absolutely filled with its own traditions.
Yeah.
So it's really commendable, Michalina.
I think I just wanted to mention that, like Polish art market is reasonably not young, because it started in like 1989 when,
Hmm.
the Iron Curtain kind of collapsed
Hmm.
and the free economy was founded. So it's only like 40 years old, whereas, English market has been there forever and has never been kind of discontinued because of any wars or invasions. So it's just a different environment, but it's also, I think, very exciting because I happen to be living in times when things are possible and there are places to grow and there are many artists that are, internationally recognized. I've noticed there is a big kind of art and craft and design wave of Polish designers that are, in Venice Biennale, on London Art Craft Week. So I'm very proud to say that we are like developing, but we also, I think, start to appreciate that Polish art can also be very good. And we don't have to be like anyone else, any other country. We don't have to mimic of what, you know, is happening in the West in a way. And we are just kind of proudly being ourselves and just doing what we want to do, which, with a younger art market, there's always a question like, how do we do things? Do we do the things you know, as they already been done in many other scenarios? Or do we actually have a freedom to do something else and we can just pick things that we think are interesting and then just continue with them?
Yeah, I mean, that was a theme that I was introducing my students to at the Venice Biennale. So in the Arsenale, a theme that I picked the Morocco pavilion, the Indian
Mhm.
pavilion, and the Irish pavilion. And this was all about just what you've said. The Moroccan one was a group of women who've traditionally woven beautiful sort of woolen tapestries and so on. But they're now working in a more contemporary tradition and they were telling their stories on an audio as well. The same with India. It wasn't about making traditional art. It was going back to their own roots, using lace, using bamboo. And I was saying that these people, and I was using some academic theory as well, people have a right to be themselves and the West should leave them alone. The traditional West should leave people alone and not try and, make them adopt traditional Western practices. So the students were very, very tuned into that idea. So hopefully going forward that is something that will continue to happen. Anyway, Michalina, I'm aware of the time and I'm aware that we both need to go to work, not least yourself with, the treasure house now coming up. So, so just remind the listeners when Treasure House will be in London.
Mhm. So it's happening from 24th until 30th of June. So
Hmm.
in almost just 1 week.
It's not far
And
away. So yeah.
it's located in a Royal Hospital, Chelsea, on the ground. So not in a building, but exactly where Chelsea Flower Show is taking place. So on a big lawn,
Yeah.
viewing the Thames River.
It's beautiful. I mean, I do encourage also on a personal level, people should go there. It's wonderful. And so, Michalina, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been fascinating hearing how a new generation of art professionals is combining traditional market knowledge with digital communications, international perspectives, entrepreneurial thinking, I might say.
Thank you
So,
so much,
on
David.
behalf of yeah, well, thank you very much on behalf of everyone listening to this. I think we're all have learnt a lot, and we're all very much looking forward to going to Treasure House. And I'd like to thank everyone listening to the Art Business Podcast. If you are on platforms where you can like and subscribe, please do so. And I'll see you next time. So thank you, Michalina.
Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward